So I am going to talk to you guys for just a couple minutes on OutRichmond, which stands for Oppression Under Target and has long since been defunct, and Virginians for Justice, which has actually now morphed into Equality Virginia. But in order to do that, I need to take us back in time to, I think we actually had it under the disco years, but the 1987 March on Washington for lesbian and gay rights. We didn't talk about transgender or questioning or bisexual, anything back then. It was lesbian and gay rights, and we had to fight a little bit for lesbian. In 1987, it was coming off a decision at the Supreme Court in 1986 upholding sodomy laws across the United States, upholding those laws. So 1987, a decision was made to have a huge civil disobedience at the Supreme Court with one intent, and the intent was to go in to the Supreme Court and actually destroy the records around that decision. And I know it sounds ridiculous, doesn't it? But if you stop for a minute and think about what that meant, none of us, and there were 900 of us arrested that day, none of us thought that we were actually getting into the Supreme Court, none of us. All of us knew that if we walked onto the steps of the Supreme Court and refused to move when the police officers said move, that we would be arrested. And at that time, we really thought arrest could mean death. Arrest could mean death. And in fact, some people didn't die, but they did get injured. So 900 of us were arrested. We were on a I'll take just a minute to tell you this story because I think it's kind of cool. But we got on these buses because that's how they were going to hold us. They put us in these string restraints, just little pieces of plastic. Some of us were in the front, most of us were in the front, some were in the back, held in the back. A lot of people who were arrested had AZT and other age drugs, food, things like that. They got put in the front of the bus, and the buses were on the street, three columns of three, rows of three, and then untold number of columns. And we just waited, and we waited, and we waited, and we waited. People whose little handcuffs were tied too tight began to cut and rub and bleed. People needed their medications, people needed food. I happened to be in a bus that was in the middle of that row of three, kind of in the middle of this whole long row of buses. We sat there just for hours and hours, and the police would not let us out of these restraints, nor would they give us food. So we decided, my bus decided that what we were going to do was right then and there, in the middle of a civil disobedience, demand action. And the way we decided to demand action was to get the entire bus. Actually, let's all do that. The entire bus. So we all sat just like this. And it began just with a couple of us. I happened to be one of them. And that bus slowly started to rock. And you better bet your butt those police came in and let us out of restraints. And, you know, the day went on and on and on. But what it did is it really showed to myself and some other people the power of one, the power of just what one person can do. So when we came back to Richmond from that incredibly empowering moment, and we looked around and said, wow, no one is standing up saying, I'm going to rock the bus. I'm going to rock the bus. And so we formed OutRichmond to rock the bus. Now, back in 87, 88, whenever it was, there weren't many of us wanting to rock the bus that publicly. There were more of us who wanted to rock the bus a little more privately and quietly. And we did that through Virginians for Justice. Two sides of the same coin. One out public protest, the other working within the system to make changes. One other little quiet story that I'll tell you. It'll be much quicker, I promise. Virginians for Justice, in case you don't know, was a statewide organization set to lobby our General Assembly to change the laws. Now, funny that I was involved in both, because I would get from OutRichmond folks, are you, loud enough to be part of OutRichmond? And from Virginians for Justice, are you conservative enough to be part of Virginians for Justice? But what we did is we hired the state's first lobbyist. And we struggled with whether or not that lobbyist should be an openly gay person with no lobbying experience or a straight person with lobbying experience. We struggled and struggled, and we finally decided that what we were going to do is we were going to hire a straight ally who had lobbying experience, and she would lobby for us part-time. She lobbied for the tobacco industry, I think, a couple other places. After her first day or two, she came back and reported back to the board, and she was very, very excited because she said, guess what? I sat down with whatever the politicians were at the time, and she said, I told them, I'm not gay, but. I'm not gay, but. That did not fly very well, I have to be honest. But back then, the I'm not gay, but was about the best we can do. Now I know most of us in this room know about Equality Virginia. We've seen Pride change. We've seen laws go down. As a matter of fact, one of the first wins Virginians for Justice had was we repealed the ABC laws, right? So we got them repealed, well, non-enforced. Yeah, it was kind of cool. Virginia law, by the way, you don't actually update the code. It's not like we say, okay, boom, we're getting it repealed and the code is updated. They wait until they do a code update. So it didn't come off the books for a long time. That's right, that's right. So let me finish the story and then we'll pass this on because I'm sure I'm out of time. The lobbyist was like, I'm not gay, but it was very exciting. At least the legislature got to hear the term gay, not homosexual, but lesbian and gay, which was cool. But I'll tell you what, the next time we hired a lobbyist, Virginians for Justice actually hired the first openly lesbian lobbyist in the state. So it was exciting times.